Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the Citrus Research Board for inviting me here today. Talk about weed management in citrus. When I was a farm advisor in Southern California, most of my program was in weed science and did focus on tree crops. And we really think this is a really important topic, especially with all the resistance going on and all the new invasive weeds that are popping up. And most of you guys that are aware, there aren't very many weed scientists left with the university, or just in general. So I really hope that you guys take the message that I have today and really push to try to get more weed scientists hired in general, especially in citrus. So I always start off with this slide. Those of you guys that have seen me talk before, I always start with this slide. Just because it's just so important, and sometimes we get into the groove of going back to all the traditional spraying that we usually do, and we usually always depend on herbicides. It's really hard to fit any other management tool into most of the regime that we do currently have. But unfortunately, that is the truth. We do focus a lot on herbicides. And those of you, this is very basic, but I know there are some students here. And since we depend on herbicides, we do depend a lot on the post herbicides. And we're actually going away from using the pre, which I can get because in order to use a pre herbicide, you need to incorporate. And what do you need for that? Water, rain. And we don't get very much of that, especially in California. And when it comes to the herbicides, when we get into the pre and post, there's different modes of action. Pretty much what this is that it's exactly how the herbicide kills the plant. There are different ways that it can kill it, but it all pretty much starts with the absorption on how it gets into the plant. Here we have 10 modes of action that we traditionally use here. And I just wanted, just to list them so we can have a reminder of all the different sites that the herbicides can get into the plant and what it disrupts. This is a little bit hard to see. Brad Hansen from UC Davis, he created this chart, and he's always updating it, which I'm glad he does. But as you can see circled, these are all the tree crops that we have in California and what herbicides can be used. If you guys Google this or go to Brad Hansen's website at UC Davis, Weed Rec, you can actually see this. It's a little bit hard to see right now. But pretty much when it comes to tree crops, we are pretty limited on what can be used just for the fact that they are considered a specialty crop and they are extremely sensitive. Citrus is very lucky to have actually one of the most herbicides that can be used for it. We ran into problems with like dates or avocados just for the fact that they are so sensitive. But we are lucky to have quite a few in citrus. So and unfortunately, there's always more pre-emergence than there are post-emergence. And here's just to show the increase of resistant weeds in general, because yet this is a specialty crop, we still, for some reason, we still gravitate towards the same herbicides when we do use it. And as you guys can see, this chart starts from the 1970s. And the 1970s is actually when glyphosate came into existence. And that's when most of the resistant weeds, and the first resistant weed, I believe by Jody Holt, who's out at UCR, who's currently retired, found the first glyphosate-resistant weed in Southern California. And it's just been increasing since there. And the blue line is actually the United States, so we are leading the world in herbicide-resistant weeds. Just a simple picture of by natural selection, this is how herbicide resistant works. By natural selection, we do not know why. There's always that one weed, that one that's going to survive. We don't know why, it just happens. And if we stick with the same mode of action, that one is going to survive, it's going to multiply, and the series continues from there, and eventually it takes 5 to 7 years for an entire population to become resistant. And when I become resistant, most likely it's glyphosate. So here is data that's taken by HEAP. HEAP runs a website, which I'm actually going to show towards the end, that focuses on herbicide-resistant weeds worldwide. And it is shown here that the poaceae, which are grass, has the most species that are resistant to herbicide. Second is the Astraceae, which is the flowers. And then Brassicaceae comes in third, but it looks like grasses are here to stay. And of course, the use of glyphosate just keeps increasing year by year. And this is a worldwide. It doesn't show all of them, but it shows a majority of all the really high-profile weeds that are becoming a nuisance worldwide. And it really kicked off maybe about 30 years ago. We've had a lot come up in maybe the last 10 years as well. And when it comes to using herbicides in citrus, this slide was actually, it's a few years old. It's by the late Travis Bean, and I took this slide from him. And the number one herbicide used in citrus is glyphosate. Indaziflam is number 2. And number 3, rimsulfuron, matrix, cyclophenacil, Trevex. And then rounding up number 5 is glufosinate, which is Rely. And I bet now that if we actually did a current slide of today, glufosinate actually probably moving up just a little bit, just for the fact that we are becoming more aware of these glyphosate-resistant weeds. I know this is really hard to see, but this is, I actually created this slide a few days ago, and this is the most current list of herbicide-resistant weeds in the state of California in all cropping systems. And it starts off by what the first one was Common Groundsel, 1981. The most current was found in 2020, verified bearded sprinkle top, and that's found in rice. So rice is also another huge contributor to herbicide-resistant weeds. So we know that resistance can happen in multiple ways, and I think that's where it probably gets a little scary, because we're all used to hearing that, oh, this is glyphosate resistant, glufosinate resistant. But actually, there are many resistances that can actually happen. There's cross herbicide resistant, which means that it's resistant to 2 or more herbicide families that have the same mechanism on how it attacks, basically a single resistance mechanism. And then you can have multiple resistance. I believe there is one weed in California, I think it's Italian ryegrass, that is triple resistant. It's the only one that is triple resistant, and unfortunately it is found in citrus. Then we have the fleabane and the horseweed, which are resistant to paraquat as well as glyphosate. Those are a little bit higher profile. So these are the confirmed weeds that you guys are dealing with right now within the field. So confirmed in citrus, we do have horseweed, fleabane, palmer, amaranth. I actually worked with that in graduate school, so I'm quite familiar with that weed. Ryegrass, bluegrass, and jungle rice. And then we have a huge list of what is suspected or questionable. And I'm sure plenty of you guys can see a lot of those out there. And in the broadleaves, we have lamb quarters. Like, I would say for the past 10 years, we've been suspecting it to be resistant. We just can't prove it yet. We just can't find it yet. And then in the grasses, we have the feather vine grass, windmill grass. Once again, these are all the poaceae. They are the grasses, and most of them are here during the summer. So just so you guys can actually look and see what these guys look like. The horseweed and fleabane, when they're quite young, they actually look very, very similar. Most of the herbicides that do attack them are usually pretty much the same because they are from the same family. Then we have the palmer, and this is actually a little bit tricky. I bet you guys can't see it here, but the palmer amaranth's leaves can actually have that little white patch or don't have the white patch. That's just genetics. It has nothing to do exactly whether it's resistant or not. Then we have the ryegrass, bluegrass, and jungle rice. Jungle rice was actually, we're starting to see it now in Southern California, as well as palmer, and we're starting to see it more into the row crops. And then ryegrass, of course, we see all over the place. That was the one that's triple resistant at the moment. But we suspect, of course, glyphosate resistant. Lamb's quarters, there's what it looks like right now. You see the lancet leaf shape, the perennial alkaloid as well. That one actually shocked me. That one I wasn't suspecting it to be potentially. And this is what the three-spike goosegrass looks like, and then feather fingergrass, windmill grass, sprangletop. Actually, sprangletop, we've actually suspected it for almost 15 years, but once again, we just can't prove it. Witchgrass, and in general, how do we manage these weeds? That's probably the biggest question. And what we like to say is we really want to use alternatives to glyphosate. Like, I can't say that enough. I know it sounds so basic, just don't use glyphosate, but it's harder said than done. And we want to try to do tank mixes. So a lot of the research that is currently being done, we're trying to tank mix things. We're trying to switch up the modes of action. If we can't use it by itself, let's see if we can create something without creating an antagonism that something that works stronger with different modes of action. And then switching in those pre and post, like again, we're in California, that's a challenge, we don't get any rain. So it's hard to use those pre-emergents. And then once again, it's actually just field scouting and IDing the correct weed. And you want to catch them before they get too big. And I know that's kind of hard, but I know in Southern California, we don't really have a winter. We have like a summer all year long. So a lot of the summer plants are becoming year-long pests. And it's becoming just such a nuisance for that. But catching it when it's small is the key. And if you guys actually read the label, and anybody writing, it actually says it's best to apply when under 6 inches or something like that. So we can't forget that we gotta catch it early. And then you wanna use the right products. That's when tank mixing comes in. If you have a mix of grasses and broadleaves, you want to get that tank mix down. You want to put the right rate. Just because it's more doesn't mean it's going to be a better mixture. Just like toxicology, dose equals the response. There's always a saturation point that it's going to hit. And you want to do it at the right time. You don't want to do it when it's 100 degrees outside, because remember how most of those herbicides get systemically into the plant is through the stomata, has to enter. If it's too hot during that day, the stomata are going to close up and nothing can get in. And also another trick is don't ever try to mow it and then apply herbicides, because remember it has to go in systemically and circulate during an actively growing plant. That's how it gets around and that's how it kills it. So it's not going to circulate very well if it's already chopped. And then just evaluate as needed. Here are just a couple of projects that I've done within the past. You know, they're still really relevant because we haven't really switched up or gained any new herbicides lately. And this was a randomized complete blog. We looked at phytotoxicity, and since this was focused on pre-emergence, we did go up to almost, 3 months on this. And this trial, I actually, was one of the last trials that I worked with Travis Bean on. And we did several tank mixes, and then the last part of the trial, we actually did the pre-emergent and then came back 6 weeks later with the post-emergent to try to mimic what growers currently do right now. And as you can see, we have, just Roundup by itself, we have Allion and Relive, Princip Carmex, plus Roundup. So we acted the tank mix with pre and post. And then half of them, we came back later to do a second application, just to show you guys how important it is to sometimes you do have to come back at it. And this is 150 days. Let me tell you, that was not fun to go through and try to rate. Like, these weeds are as tall as I was, and there was bugs going down my shirt. It was not fun. So the first slide, the first picture you see is an untreated. As you can see, there's a lot of vegetation. Roundup, we know, has no pre-emergent in it, so it worked very well, but only like the first month or so. And then, as you can see, the best mixture is on the bottom middle photo, and there we had Allion, Matrix, and Roundup. So there we had the pre and the post mixed in together. And 150 days later, that's what it looked like. So it's just proof right there that we have to do these tank mixes. And then Matrix and Roundup did fairly well as well for that. And then we also wanted to try some organic stuff, because I know that organic citrus is really booming, especially in Southern California. And when I was a farm advisor, I had a lot of clientele come to me and it's like, what do I do for organic? It is just like, there's not much there. And there are no pre-emergent organic herbicides. All there is post, which means anything it touches, then it will die, but it has to actually come in contact with the plant. We did conventional for treatment number 9. We did Princip and Roundup, and then we came back 6 weeks later with Suppress. Suppress is an organic herbicide that is really popular, and as you can tell, it didn't do as well as we wanted it to do. But if you look on the bottom, we had Princip, Roundup, and Weathermax, and then we came back later with Paraquat. And I know Paraquat's another controversial herbicide since DPR put some new regulations on that. It's not that easy to buy or to spray anymore. It works fairly well, but it is some pretty rough stuff to work with. So just some examples of tank mixes. Sorry, this is a little bit small. This one is a trial that I did last summer. And I couldn't repeat it this summer because I started working for Bayer, so I couldn't continue it. So unfortunately, we can't get this published. But it's still really good data. And this one, literally, I just threw in a bunch of different things just to compare. We have pre, we have post, we have maybe a couple of tank mixes in there. Blazosulfuron, I believe that's a ISK product. And I think they were the leaders in having me put this together. I just kind of threw in some more herbicides in there. And if you guys look on the very bottom, you also see what's called Break-On, and it's Floridone. And that one is actually not labeled in citrus, it's labeled in cotton and used for grasses and broadleaves. And the company came to me, wanted to know, because they know how big citrus is getting, and they want to know if they can actually get a label for it here in California. So I used Break-On, and I was actually quite surprised with this stuff, because if you look at the first evaluation that I did the first week, it did very, very poor. I didn't really know very much about this herbicide, and as you can see, the regular contenders did very, very well in controlling. Things that are about 80% or higher in control is considered good. Once we get down to the 14 day mark, which is about 2 weeks, they kind of ranked to where I thought they were going to rank. And then when I did it a month later, the evaluation, that's when I was really surprised. So all of our leading herbicides actually dropped a lot, and Floridone actually came up on top. So it's a very slow herbicide, but at the end it kept steady, and it actually had the best control out of all of them towards the end of the month. So that surprised me. And all the other ones kind of had kind kind of went where they went. And I was surprised that indazaplan didn't work as well. I don't know why it didn't work as well. I don't know if it was the application, but usually it goes pretty high when I do use it in any of the trials that I did. So I'm here just to show at the 2-week mark, which is about the average. You kind of want to look at it when it is a post herbicide. So the ISP product, flazosulfuron worked fairly well, even with it tank mixed with glufosinate. But I did notice that the flazosulfuron did do a little bit better than it did with the tank mix. So I don't know if there was some antagonism there. That's one thing you kind of have to look out for when you are mixing products. There are actually some products that just work better when they're by themselves. Here we have glufosinate, cyclophenacil, glyphosate, and of course the untreated. Kind of where I thought they were going to be. Fluoridone, that's the one where I was like, hey, right, this is not going to work. And at 14 days, it was still really slow working. And the fluoridone with the glyphosate as well. But once again, at the very end of the day, it's just going to have to be preventative. When going into weed science, it was there's no tricks to it. There's nothing to it. It's just preventative work, and you want to try to get that population in control. And unfortunately, most of the time, you guys don't have that control because you usually buy the grove already with established weeds in it. And so trying to even get those weeds in control, you might run into a weed shift. So you control one weed population and then another one will pop right back up. So that's something that you guys have to deal with. But you also have to think about what's the most cost efficient method as well. What is in your budget? And that's where I think a lot of the Southern California organic growers are running into trouble because they are all maybe 5 acres, 6 acres, maybe at the max you'll see 8, a bunch of small farms, and they don't have the budget for weeds. So that's another problem that they're having. But this slide just shows we're in 2021, which is actually like the lowest one. The lowest one, but it does show that we are expected to use more herbicides, more ag chemicals in the near future. And it's just going to increase, and they're, at least we're getting stuff within the pipeline. And I know at Bayer we have some stuff that are coming in, and this is my first experience working with a private company. So having to work for the university for so many years, I'm finally get to see the different side of how stuff comes along the pipeline. And so ag chemicals is where to invest if that's what you guys are thinking. Here's the website that I wanted to mention that has all the herbicide-resistant weeds. It also has the people who found the resistant weeds, and just so you guys can have an idea of what other states are dealing with, what different commodities are dealing with, and just in general what California is dealing with. And we might have room for one question, if we have it.